Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So we're going to go to the next section. Up here, guys. All the way in the front. Because you came late, you have to walk backwards. No, I'm just joking. We were having conversations about how we used to get beat at government school when we were younger, but we won't do that. So, once you have your thought process and you've broken duality in your mind, you then are able to change how you act in the world. Does anybody know what this mural? This is one of the murals of Guru Nanak Sahib's life that used to be at Baba Atal Gurdwara and the Varsar complex that's been painted over now by our wonderful SGPC. But does anybody know what's happening in the Sakhi here? It's a famous Sakhi. It's after Guru Nanak Sahib came out of the water and he said, "Na koi Musalman," right? And where did he go? What was Guru Nanak Sahib's job? Come on, guys. What was his job? Use my laser pointer now. I don't know anyone's names.
Where is the laser pointer?
Do you know what his job was? Who knows what Guru Nanak Sahib's job was? Sorry?
Is he like a shopkeeper or something?
No, he worked for the government. He was a bureaucrat. Good, sick job, you know, made his father proud. He worked for the governor of the Nawab, Daulat Khan, this guy over here. See, it says Nawab. You see? There he is here again. It's like a comic book. Here's the first part of the scene and then the second part. So, Daulat Khan Lodi was his name. They were in the town. What town was it that Guru Nanak Sahib lived at with his big sister? Sultanpur Lodi, right? His sister's name was? What was her husband's name? Bhai Jairam. Two of the first six, okay? And Guru Nanak Sahib worked in the warehouse. He would give food to the people who worked for the government, okay? And what did Guru Nanak Sahib do on the day when he came out of the river? When he started to count out the food, what did he start to do? Dera, dera, dera. Okay, so we've all heard the Sakhi, right? Okay? This is that story. So this is about changing your action. Like Guru Nanak Sahib lived Sikhi, so we can learn from his example. So, one thing we need to be careful of is what Asakivar talks about quite a bit is about getting away from negative ritualistic actions and moving towards positive actions that aren't based on ritual. So let's see what Guruji says here. So if I could get Gagan Singh to read this one, please.
Galmala tilak lilatang.
A little bit louder.
Galmala tilak lilatang do toti bastra kapatang je janas brahman karman sab fokat nishto karman.
What does fokat mean? You see this word a lot. It comes up in Guru Gobind Singh's Bani a lot. For example, in Sevilla, you'll hear it a lot as well. What does this word fokat mean? Sorry?
Meaningless.
Meaningless, useless, empty. So, Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is saying in this slok from 4014 that you look like a great person. You have a mala around your neck, you have a tilak on your forehead, you are wearing your special loincloths, because when Brahmins meditate, they wear special loincloths, and they even put a special turban on their head, okay? So similarly, we all do this too. I come here, I don't wear gold all the time, but when I come to Khalsa camp, I like to dress up, you know? And I wear my dress, and I put on my jola, and I wear my nice, actually I wear my namal all the time, it's not very nice anyways, but I wear my namal, and we think that these actions, so we have to be very careful. When Guru Sahib is criticizing, for example, here Guruji is criticizing Brahmins. Gurbani is not constricted by time or place. The metaphor or the example may be from a time or place because it has to have relevancy. And that's why it's important for us to learn the culture, learn the language, learn how society worked in the 1500s in India, for example. But the example, the idea behind it, the truth in it is infinite. It's always real. So instead of looking at this as a criticism of Brahmanism, let's make this a criticism of ourselves. We think that doing all of these things, dressing up nice, sitting there with our mala, or whatever ritual we do to do Simran, we think that that is what makes us religious. And Guruji is saying that that is empty. That's not what makes you into a religious person. The other thing that we like to do, which is what we do when we're at camps, for example, is that we like to think and talk about things. And this is what a lot of us do on the internet, for example, or on Facebook, or whatever it is you crazy kids are using, I don't know. Snapchat? You can't discuss on Snapchat, can you? I don't know what you guys do on Snapchat. But anyways, we used to have MSN Messenger, so much simpler back in the old days, you know? So we end up analyzing, and what happens when we analyze Bani or Lith, for example? We end up arguing over stupid points, right? And we end up getting into fights with other people about silly things that don't have any importance. Let's see what Guru Nanak Sahib Ji says about just becoming a scholar and just becoming obsessed with reading or writing. So, Anita Benji to read. Benji?
Pariya jati arja, pariya jati saas, nanak lekha ek gal bol hum mein chakra.
So you can read, and we all know the slok, it goes on for quite a while. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji gives all these examples. He says you can read for your whole life. With every breath you could be reading all these amazing granths and books and all this incredible stuff. But without pyar for Vaheguru, without developing that love for Vaheguru, it is all home and it's all useless. Chakna. So we have to be careful also that we don't fall into that trap, which is something that can happen at camps, for example, where we talk about Bani or Sikhi, that we make it into something very rudimentary or very simplistic, where it's just about, here, learn this and then you'll be a good Sikh, or act like this and you'll be a good Sikh. But that's not how Sikhi works. Sikhi is not a religion of laws, for example. It's not a religion of Rith. It's not a religion of rules. It's not a religion of scripture, for example. It's a religion of Shabad. And Shabad Guru is something that you have to experience, not something that you can study or something that you can read only. It's something that you develop within yourself, a connection to Shabad Guru. It's Anhad Shabad, right? So Anhad Shabad, that idea, which we talk about in Anand Sahib every day, is something that is primal, originating from Vaheguru, that can never be explained, but has to be felt. That's what we want to try to develop. So it's like asking a little kid to explain why they love their parent. So a little kid will instinctively know that they love their mother and father. They'll say, we just love you, we love you. And then sometimes if you ask them, they'll give like silly answers like, because you give us food or whatever, which is also pretty telling, Because in Bani also we see that Guruji says, thank you for everything you've given us, because Vaheguru is our caretaker, like our mother and father. But more importantly, just like love can't be described, or really it has to be experienced. Like you can't, if someone's never felt love in their life, it's very hard to explain to them what love feels like. In the same way, Vaheguru is something you have to experience. So this is why, for example, Professor Buddha Singh says that Sikhi is a spirit. It's a spirit of Sikhi. We're people of the spirit, not people of books. So Lahit is important. I don't think I'm saying that it's not important. Lahit is important because it develops in you a discipline and a mindset to be able to connect with Vaheguru. But once you start thinking that Lahit is an end goal of Sikhi, then you've lost your way. Because then you're back in this trap here. So Lahit is not the end goal of Sikhi, Lahit is the means to the end goal of Sikhi. So when we do seva, for example, when we do actions, we think that simply doing good things is good enough. And the sad thing is that Guruji, in a very straightforward, and Guru Angad Sahib Ji, these sloks are all from Guru Angad Sahib Ji, and I think it's really important that they're from Guru Angad Sahib Ji because Guru Angad Sahib Ji's life really embodied a lot of these messages. So if someone could please read this slok. Pali?
Salam jabal ko kare mudhu tha jaye nanak duga kuriya khai na khai.
So salam, what does salam mean? How do Muslims say hello? Salam? Sorry? Salam alaikum, right? Salam just means to say hello. So someone who says hello or gives respect, but also talks back, Jawab, right? Jawab, to their master, is not doing real, is being led astray. Neither of these actions are going to get you anywhere. So we have a mindset where we think that we're going to do good things and that will be good for us. Because we're still doing it as a transaction. We think, if we do this good thing, then Vaiguru will be happy with us, Guruji will be happy with us, and we'll get a reward. That's how a lot of us, that's how I think about Seva, for example. Speaking about myself, is that, and then when something doesn't go well, what do? God, why? It's so unfair. Life's so unfair. It sucks, you know? Why is it always happening to me? Why can't it just be easy for once, you know? So we get into that thinking, like, life's so terrible, it's so unfair, you know, good things happen to other people, why can't I just, you know, why do they get all the good things and not me? So that's the way we think, right? We get this very, it's all about us, and we think that we should always be rewarded for our actions. And Guruji is saying, your good actions are useless. Your good actions are just as bad as when you're speaking back to Vaiguru. Because your good actions come from a place of homem. They come from a place of self, of wanting to get rewards. So when Guru Nanak Sahib, he got up in the middle of the night and he asked his sons to get the cup for him to take his bath, right? And it had fallen into the muddy pond by the house. What did his sons say? What does Sri Chandra Lakshmi Das say? Does anyone know?
That no one get dirty.
Yeah, they said, you're crazy, Dad. We don't want to get dirty. Just use a different cup, right? Like, why do we need to get that one out? It's the middle of the night. It makes no sense. When Guru Nanak Sahib, he went all the way to Bhai house, which was a different part of Kartarpur. So instead of going in to the water, Benny, there's a couple of seats up here if you guys want to come up. So instead of going into the water himself, what does Guruji do? He goes all the way. Guruji wasn't afraid of getting himself dirty. He had walked around for 30 years getting dirty, right? That's not the issue. He went all the way to Bhai house, woke up Bhai and he said, Bhai go get my cup. What did Bhai say? Did he say, Guruji, why are you asking me to do this in the middle of the night? Why did you ask somebody else? Why don't you get a cup, a different cup to give yourself a bath? Like, what's the point of this? Did Bhai say any of that? What was Bhai response? Santbir. So that is true seva. True seva is when you don't talk back and you don't do things out of reward. What were Sri Chandra Lakshmi Das always doing things out of? What did they expect from Guru Nanak Sahib Ji? That they would become what? The next Guru. They expected it. What was Bhai Lena's reason for doing all of these crazy things that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji asked him? And they were crazy. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji asked him to go into a tree and shake it so that Mithai would come down. He asked him to eat a dead body, right? He asked him what time it was. He asked him if it was daytime when it was nighttime outside. So these are the things that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji asked Bhai Lena. These were crazy things. Why did Bhai Lena do these things for Guru Nanak Sahib Ji? Haji?
No.
Love. It's the same reason why Bhai Dayaram stood up for Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Because if logic or mind came into it, if all the scholarly thinking came into it, if he sat there and thought about it, Bhai Lena would have been like, yeah, this just doesn't make sense. Why would I want to eat a dead body, Guru Nanak? You know? By the way, for those of you who don't know, what was under the sheep where the dead body was? It was prashad. The Guru Nanak Sahib Ji didn't make Guru Angad eat a dead body, okay, don't worry. Guru Nanak Sahib Ji made, and then my son said to me, did Guru Nanak Sahib Ji go in the middle of the night and make a whole bunch of prashad and hide it in the jungle? I guess so, he must have, I don't know. So it's out of love. The same way, by there I'm going to go, you know what, Guru Gobind Singh Ji? Killing us and sacrificing human beings, this doesn't seem like something Guru Nanak would do. Are you sure you're okay? Do you need to get some rest maybe? You know, like what's going on here? He didn't run away. By there, I just stood up and said, Guruji, I already gave you my head, it's yours to take. So that's love, right? That's not something that can be explained or thought about. So what is real seva? Benji, can you read this one? Yeah. Are you comfortable reading, Bonnie? Harpreet Kaur, can you read it? You have to read a little louder. It's a beautiful idea what Guru Angad Sahib is saying here. What is real seva? If you have not conquered fear, if you haven't gotten over your bull, and what's the real fear? What's the only fear that everyone has in this world? Where does all fear stem from? Fear of what?
Death.
Death. Fear of death, right? That's the only real fear we have. All other fears are just a result of our fear of death. And we're afraid of death because we're attached to what? Our bodies, right? That we don't know our true nature. So if you have not gone over that fear, then all your seva is useless. This is what Guru Angad Sahib Ji said. And then what does he say? A true sevadar is someone who gets completely immersed within their master. And what happened to Guru Uttapai? What did he become? Guru Angad. And what does Angad mean? By limb, right? So Guru Uttapai literally became not literally, sorry. He figuratively became a limb of Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, and he literally became the next Nanak, right? So that is a real goal of seva. The real goal of seva is through an intense love that you yourself lose yourself in the person you're doing seva for. When we do seva, what is our mindset? What is our thinking when we do our actions? We are still seeing otherness in people. We're seeing the other. Sikhs have really cool traditions that we sometimes forget. When Sikhs do seva in Gurdwara, what do they say in Langar? What do they call people? Vaiguruji, right? Prashadaji Vaiguruji, right? That's an old Sikh tradition, because when you're doing seva, what is your goal? It's to recognize Vaiguru in the other person. So all these sort of cool old traditions that we have, they have a purpose behind them. So that's the goal. When we do seva for somebody, now doing seva for people that look like you, that's easy. The real seva comes outside of the Gurdwara. Can you do seva for people that don't look like you, that dress and wear different clothes, that cut their hair, that don't act like Sikhs or aren't Sikhs? Can you do seva for them? So that becomes a real challenge. Because Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, when he did the very first langar in Sikh history, did he do it for a bunch of Sikhs? No. He did it for some poor sadhus in the jungle, right? So it's easy to do seva for people that look like you. It's easier. Real seva is when you do it for someone who's totally different than you. The ultimate seva is when you're willing to do it for somebody who's totally separate, opposite of your thinking, like what Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji did for the Hindus. Where he's able to do the ultimate seva, which is sacrifice your life for people who he fundamentally disagreed with. So, when we talked last time in the morning lecture, we talked about this whole world is truth. So if this whole world is truth and Vaiguru exists everywhere, then there's no distinction between us and everything else around us. And that's why the way that we connect with Vaiguru is not just through our simran or our bhat and bani, but it's through our kirt, through our work. Which is why Guru Nanak Sahib Ji and Bhai Lehna here are doing hard work every day. So being a part of society, treating people with respect, being productive, working, and then using that money to then help other people who can't work for themselves, that's what Sikhi is. So spirituality has been totally turned on its head. And still in our minds, we're still stuck in Hindu thinking or Buddhist thinking. When we imagine religious action, and I want you guys to just close your eyes for a minute and think about someone who's religious. So, I know when I close my mind and I think of somebody who's religious, I usually think of somebody sitting there just doing Nam Simran, right? You can open your eyes. But was Guru Nanak Sahib Ji not full of religiosity, if you want to call it that, while he was working in the fields? Or was Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji not full of it when he was fighting in the battlefield? So real spirituality is not something that you just pick up and do, 2 hours in the morning or once a week at Gurdwara. It's something that is a part of all of your actions all the time. That's what we want to try to develop. So, Guru Arjan Sahib Ji, outside of Tarn Taran, made a hospital for people with leprosy. So leprosy is a communicable disease that you can catch at a young age and then develops over time, and it literally kills your nerve endings. So people with leprosy parts of their body start to fall off, like their fingers and hands and noses and stuff. People are deadly afraid of lepers, and they would keep them they wouldn't let them come into cities, and they would keep them in horrible conditions, and nobody would go near them. Guru Arjan Sahib Ji built a place for lepers, a hospital to be care for them, and he would go and do seva for them himself, and wash them, and feed them. So that's what seva is, where you're able to go to a place where people are rejected, the lowest of the low. So the challenge is, in our lives, each one of us needs to be doing this type of seva in the community. So when people say, why are Sikhs not respected anymore? Why don't we have the standing that we used to have as a Band? Because we're not engaged in this type of behavior anymore. When the British took over India and the Sikhs fought for Indian independence, they were fighting for Indian independence for millions of people who were not Sikhs. What percentage of India's population were the Sikhs at that time? Does anybody know?
1.6%.
Sorry?
1.6%.
Yeah, 1.6%, less than 2%. There are more Christians in India than there are Sikhs. So Sikhs were the majority of people who fought and died for Indian independence because they saw something that needed to be done and they took action. So there are many important social causes in our world today, both inside our community and outside the community. We need to be involved. So stop thinking about seva as something that happens in the Gurdwara. Seva happens out in the real world, helping real people. So at hospitals, you guys can do seva, we can do seva. At food banks, we can do seva. In Toronto, the Sikh, young Sikhs have come up with an amazing initiative. I'm sure you guys have heard of the Seva Food Bank, and it's grown a lot this year, where they created a food bank which is run with Sikh principles in mind, but serves the whole community. So majority of the people who use the services of the Seva Food Bank are not Sikhs. But the majority of the people who seva there are Sikhs, which is pretty incredible. So we can, here in Vancouver, there's so many young Sikhs, there's lots of projects that we can do. There's immigrants, there's refugees, there's a lot of different issues. This is a way that the Sikh Band gets unity as well, and I've talked about this at previous camps as well. When we start working on things together and actually doing seva and getting down on our hands and knees and actually doing work, then all those issues about whether you read Ragmala or not stop being important. So in the 1920s, when Sikhs were walking to Jeto or Guru Ka Bagh, and other Sikhs would see in the band that these people are going to give Shahidi at these morche, they wouldn't ask them, do you do Reras? How long do you do it? Where do you stop? How long is your jope? They saw other Sikhs doing seva, they jumped in and they ran in to sacrifice themselves with those fellow Sikhs. So those issues stop being important, because those issues don't matter. Those differences are going to happen in any family. What becomes more important is, what type of actions is a person doing? Can I help them do those actions? So we should be inspired by the Guru. So the only actions that matter are actions based on love. Real seva is seva that you do without expectations. And when you do seva, recognize Vaheguru in the people you do seva. So we have, a lot of us, half the picture where we do really concentrate on trying to recognize Vaheguru inside of us through Naam Simran or Kirtan. We're missing out on this essential second half, recognizing Vaheguru in other people. And instead of ritualism, engage with Vaheguru through devotion and prayer. So Bani, Path, Simran are important, but they need to be broken of ritual. If you're stuck in, it has to be done in this way, you have to sit like this, or it has to be done like that, then you're getting away from the true core of it, which is, how do I develop a loving relationship with Guruji? How do I fall in love with Vaheguru? Anybody have any questions about this section? Hanji.
I don't have a question about this specific
Yep.
section, but about Asam Vivad in general.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
The first day that I heard Shabbat's done within, that were done, Asam were for,
Oh, I didn't talk about that earlier, yes. Yeah.
I don't explain it, it's like the Shabbats, they weren't a part of Asam Vivad,
Yeah,
they were
so-
done in Asam,
Yeah.
a part of Asam Vivad.
So that's also part of the tradition, that you do other Shabbats mixed into Asakiva, so along with the Shants. And usually the Shabbats will be related to the theme, or they should be if the person doing Kirtan knows their Bani well, they should be related to the theme. So the early Shabbats will often have to do with Amrit Lila, for example, because it's Amrit Lila time. And then later Shabbats will be related to the different ideas that are coming across. So, Hanji.
Do we know when that tradition started?
No. So we don't, like, things like that I would feel are very old because we can see that things that were done regularly in the community don't get changed that much over time. So, for example, there's certain Sikh traditions that we've kept alive, you know, like how we treat Nishan Sahibs or stuff like that, that even if it was never written down, this is how you treat a Nishan Sahib. People just know that that's how you do it because it's an old tradition in the Band that's been going on for many generations or from the Guru's time. So a lot of stuff wasn't written down because people just assume this is obvious that this is how you do it. So I assume that it's very old. Yeah. Any other questions? Did everyone hear her question? Is it about other shabads that we do while we're doing Asaki Bad? Okay. So once you've changed your actions and your thoughts, and you started to recognize Akal Purkh Vaheguru in everybody, then it becomes a matter of changing the world around you. So I've chosen here a picture of Guru Nanak as a young kid because the sloks that he revealed at that time are included in Asaki Bad, right? And these are the sloks about Jino. So here Guru Nanak Sahib is rejecting the Jino that his father, Mehta Kallu, and the Pandit Hardayal are trying to put on him. So, what happens when you divide the world into good and bad, or sacred and impure things? So we start thinking about impurity, or sukcham. We start thinking that some things are pure and some things are impure. The end result is this, after hundreds or thousands of years. So there's a temple in East India where tribal Hindus are like Dalits, they're outside of the caste system, are forced to roll in the jute of Brahmins. So Brahmins eat food and then they force the tribal people to roll around in their jute, they eat on the patte, they force them to eat, roll around in that. They think that this will bring good luck to the community. This is a Dalit activist who speaks out against the caste system, and he's getting beat up. Okay, his name is K.S. Shivaramu. So when you divide people between, you know, that these people are pure, they're the high caste, and these are the impure, then you start coming up with these types of divisions where you start treating people like garbage, literally like garbage. So what's the nature of a society where dualism is at its core? It's not only India that's a bad country, right? This is only 50 years ago in North America. Here in the south of the US, these students, black and white, are doing a sit-in at a diner. Does anyone heard about sit-ins? So to try to get break segregation, where black people were not allowed into white establishments, they would go into diners and restaurants and cafes and do sit-ins. They would literally just sit there. And you can see this whole mass of young and older people. What are they doing to them? You can see his clothes are drenched in food. They're pouring food and stuff on them. So this was, the majority of the society is in support of these guys. That's what happens when a society is twisted by duality. You can start treating people as garbage and it can be considered acceptable. And the weird ones are the ones who are saying that it shouldn't be happening like that. They're the ones who are the strange ones, right? The people in power, the police, the government, they're these guys back here. So that's what happens when you're in a society where you're not recognizing Vaheguru in other people. So we can see the results of that, of course, in India. With post-84, what happened to Sikhs, for example, right? So when a society works on these principles, it's very easy to start just throwing human beings away. So the nature of a dualistic society is that people do actions based on fear. There's false respect, so people pretend like they respect people in power, but it's not based on genuine respect. There's a lot of hypocrisy, and we see that within the Panth today as well, because we are starting to develop this type of society within our community, where the people in charge, or people who should be living lives that are examples to others, are instead hypocrites, right? And we start to stereotype and discriminate against people, creating an unequal society. Here's a picture of two Bahari women making, I'm not sure what they're doing, to be honest. They're Dalit women in Bihar. So all over India we can see people living like this. So especially Dalit women are doubly considered dirty. Because in Indian mentality, first of all, low caste people are dirty, but then women are especially dirty, especially because they have their periods every month and because they give birth. So those two biological functions, which are normal and necessary for society, right? Otherwise there'd be no people, are considered dirty. Now the word sutak means impurity, but it actually refers specifically to menstruation. That's what it refers to. It refers to your period. And let's see what Guru Nanak Sahib Ji says about sutak. Can somebody read that, please? Summerson, can you read it? Singh, can you read it?
ਜੇਕਰ ਸੂਤਕ ਮੰਨੀਐ ਸਭ ਤੈ ਸੂਤਕ ਹੋਏ.
So if you start thinking that sutak is dirty, that it's impure, then everything is impure. Because all of us are born from our mothers, right? There's no matrix people yet, right? Born in La Paz. Maybe then you could say, what is Guru Nanak Sahib talking about? People are born in, I don't know what. So we're all born from childbirth, which is a product of menstruation, right? Then if we believe in that, then impurity is everywhere, and then we start treating people like this. What does Guruji say is real impurity? I know it's a cheap shot, but I mean, he looks ridiculous, okay? This is Badal, who recently got a special award from Akal Takht. What was his award again? Pant Ratan, yes. So Jewel of the Pant. And here he is doing Hindu rituals. So what is real impurity? Sabbo sutak param hai, duje lagge jaye. So what are the two key words here? Real sutak is param. What does param mean? Doubt. If you don't have faith in your guru, then you're going to do stuff like this, right? And param doesn't just mean Hindu rituals. So I'm not just talking about if you guys go to fortune tellers and get your hands read or astrologists. I hope none of you guys are doing that. But even more than that, it's when we start going to other places for answers or we stop having faith in our guru. That's param. When we start believing in superstitions, when we start believing in caste rules, other things, those are all param. And real sutik is duje, duality. So where you are attached to duality, that is real impurity. That's what Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is saying. What is real purity? Can Benji read this? Benji, can you read it? Let's go. No? Can you read it, Benji?
Nujur sanavni ave varuvar duthe dutta mukha sai mukha thoy koi suche na akhya banj kunda toy suche se inanka jinman vasya sai.
So Guruji is turning the metaphor of menstruation on its head. So he's saying, yeah, it's normal for women to have their period every month. And just the same way that women have their period every month, people take duality and put it into their body. Instead of thinking of menstruation as being impure, real impurity is when we are connected to param and duality. Okay? He says, you do not get pure just by washing your body. So this is a real idea in in Punjabi culture as well, that women are impure when they're on their period, for example. So many girls will grow up in houses where they're not allowed to do tabiya di seva if they're on their period, right? Or women aren't allowed to leave their house after they have birth, right? How many days is it?
40.
40 days. So after 40 days, and you're all of a sudden pure again, I guess, right? So this is the type of negative param thinking that we need to break out of. Because Guruji says that real purity does not happen through bathing. What is real purity? Suche sei nanaka jin man vasya soy. In your man, if you have Vaigru Vasta, right? Living, residing, that is real purity. So your external appearance doesn't make you pure. And I'm saying that wearing a drola, I'm wearing a damala, and having my case. So we have to be careful. These things are still very important, but they are not the end goal of Sikhi, and they are not what makes us pure. Pure is our thinking and actions inspired by love. So this is a really tough one for us. And this is something that also we should really be comfortable with, because this is a common criticism. And you'll hear people say this all the time. They'll say, why should we take Amrit? Guru Nanak Sahib Ji rejected Janot, and wearing a gata is just like wearing a Janot. Has anyone ever heard that before? I'm sure we've all heard that, right? And so instead of just getting uncomfortable, let's really look at that and try to see what Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is talking about. Can somebody, Bhai, can you read it?
ਹੋਏ ਪੁਰਾਣਾ ਸੁਟਿਆ ਪੀ ਫਿਰ ਪਾਈਆ ਹੋਰ ਨਾਨਕ ਤਗ ਨਾ ਟੁੱਟੀ ਜੇ ਤਗ ਹੋਵੇ ਜੋਰ.
So the Tagga that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is talking about the Janot. So when you reach, if you're a Brahmin when you're 7, and if you're a Khatri when you're 9, and if you're a Shudra when you're 11, sorry, Vish, no, when you're 11, you get a Janot, okay, if you're a boy. And it's like a bar mitzvah, like a coming of age ceremony, it's a big deal. And Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, as a child, is rejecting this to the Pandit. And he's saying, what's the point of this thread? It's going to get old, it's going to get torn. I want a real thread that will never break. What is the type of thread that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji wants? Krishnamukar, can you read it? Louder, please. So the real Tagga that Guru Nanak Sahib Ji is saying, I want to have, is the one Tagga that actually gives me honor. So honor is a really incredible idea. Again, real honor, real ijjat and sikhi comes from your Guru, right? Not from your own actions. So the honor that I get from my Guru, I want that type of Tagga. And that Tagga is made by my actions, how I behave. And that Tagga can never be broken, and that's the one that is recognized in Dargah, in the court of Vaheguru. So I want a Tagga that will give me honor from Vaheguru and that will never be broken and that will get me love and grace from Vaheguru. So that's an incredible thing to have. So how do you get that Tagga? So the Janot, the truth is that we all wear Janots now. We made Sikhi into Janots. Because we think that wearing our dastars or keeping our kiss or keeping our kirbans or our kange, whatever our kakars are, or our trola or bana, whatever we're doing, we have made those things into a Janot because we think that they alone are what brings us honor and respect and makes us into good Sikhs. So the criticism from other people isn't invalid. They're usually their reason for saying is because they are making excuses because they don't want to understand the heart of Sikhi, right? Kakars are very important. They're a gift of love from the Guru. They're practical objects that have practical purposes as well. But more than that, the kakars are about developing a lifestyle that allow you to develop a real Janot. These kakars, instead of making it your Janot, you need to use them to develop the real one, which is something internal. And that internal thing is something that is eternal, that can never be broken. So nothing material can ever last forever, right? We know that. Just like our own gatas or kirbans do get worn out, right? I guess it'd be hard to wear a kirban, but it's possible if you're using it a lot, I guess. So, real sacredness is based on actions. So this is a difficult thing for us to wrap our heads around as Sikhs today because we really brought on a lot of Hindu thinking into our culture. And we've removed ourselves from Sikh thinking, or Sikh culture. And Sikh culture was about judging people based on actions, not on their roles or jobs or how they lived. So who did the Khalsa Panth choose as their leader when they were offered a Nawabi? Kapoor Singh. And what was Kapoor Singh doing? What was his job?
Not looking at horses.
He was, what was he doing for the horses? Not just feeding them.
He cleaned their mess.
Yeah, he cleaned their mess. Because back in the day, all the Sikhs had their own horses. So you guys can imagine, anyone here ever hung out with horses? They are disgusting. They make huge messes, right? And you can imagine outside of a gurdwara what a mess it would have been back in the older days. Just all those horses going to the bathroom, it would have been a huge mess. In a Hindu tradition, who would have had that job of cleaning up the horses? The lowest caste, right? In the Sikh tradition, anybody who wanted to do that seva did that seva. And the person who had that seva, which was dirty, disgusting seva, not the type of seva that gets you good, you know, like good exposure, like what I'm doing here, standing here in my, you know, loy and stuff, right? It is a type of seva where you just smell like literally like shit all day, right? Nawab Kapoor Singh was doing that seva, and the Khalsa Panth rewarded him with the Nawabi, made him the Jatadar of the whole Khalsa Dal, of the Khalsa army. So we turn on its head old cultural traditions. If other cultures consider the people that do garbage work to be the worst human beings, we take the people that do garbage work and we make them into our kings. That's an incredible idea, right? So from a traditional Indian perspective, we'd say this person is ganda. He does dirty work, he smells awful. Sikh tradition, people who do seva of jode, that's one of the greatest sevas you can do, right? At a gurukar, is cleaning people's shoes. Whereas in Asian culture, shoes are the dirtiest thing. Even pointing your feet at people is disrespectful, right? Wearing your shoes into someone's house is a huge disrespect. In Sikhi, those Sikhs will literally fight, and you see that on the other side. People will fight over the chance to do seva for the Sangha's shoes, right? So we have taken ideas of purity and turned them on their head. So for us, it's not the work you do which makes you impure, it's your thoughts and your actions that make you impure, your actions if they're based in duality or not. So we have to ask ourselves, what inspires us to act? We want to develop a fearless quality when we act, like Guru Nanak Sahib Ji in Mecca. The cultures around us, be they Vedic cultures or Western cultures, operate out of fear. That means that everything that happens, it's out of fear of negative consequences. There are no negative consequences in Sikhi except for your own doing. So if you reap bad actions, you're going to receive bad actions in return. That's what Sikhi is. So instead of operating out of fear, you operate out of love. That if I do loving and graceful things, and if I live in the Kirpa Hukam of Vaheguru, then I will be further in love, and my life will achieve a greater purpose where I can develop these qualities. This Tagga that will never break, for example. Professor Teja Singh has a really interesting quote that I really like. He says, the goal of a Sikh life is not to get salvation, but it's to develop the qualities of Vaheguru. And I spoke about that today in the Hukam this morning. The goal of a Sikh life is to develop the qualities of Mool Mantra, for example, within us. So if Vaheguru is sovereign, then we want to be sovereign. If Vaheguru is Akal, then what do Sikhs call themselves? Akali, right? If Vaheguru is without fear, then what do Sikhs become? They become fearless. So we want to take the qualities of Vaheguru. If Vaheguru is creative, then Sikhs need to be creative. Vaheguru creates universes, we need to create art or literature or music or other things to be able to spread the message of Sikhi, right? So the goal of Sikhi is that true love transcends fear. So Guru Nanak Sahib Ji, if he was operating out of fear, he would never have pointed his feet at Mecca. That's a suicidal act to do, right? But he's operating out of love, and he was able to transform the people. The Muslims who were there in Mecca at the time were astounded, and they wanted to kill Guru Nanak. But when he explained to them where he was coming from, and when he revealed to them Bani, they were so inspired that their own perception was transformed. Their thinking was totally transformed. So just as, I know I used the same picture as before. Guru Nanak's by Lena doing what we would consider dirty actions, physically dirty. Let's see what Guru Nanak Sahib Ji says about acts of true love and what makes things pure. Ek nahi aski, duje lage jaye, Nanak asaka kandiye, sadhi rehe samaye. What's aski? Love, right? All you Hindi movie watchers, you guys should know that word, right? So, Real love, if you're clinging to duality, that's not real love. Real love is when you are connected to a Galpur Vaiguru. So when you're connected to a Galpur Vaiguru, then all your actions are pure. So we need to get out of this thinking of impure and pure and start thinking about impure and pure thoughts and actions. In conclusion of this section here, physical objects are not sacred. Devotion and righteous actions are sacred. And when you bring Vaiguru into yourself, that's when you're pure. And the number one thing is apply one standard to all people. So when Guru Nanak said you went to Bhai Lallo, even though he was poor and he had nothing, Guru Nanak said he gave him immense levels of amount of respect. Because what Guru Nanak said he looked at in Bhai Lallo were his actions, not what he had materially. So this is a really difficult lesson for us to learn. We live in a culture right now, all of us, where we get impressed by wealth, or we're impressed by people with fancy things, we're impressed by people with power. Guru Nanak said he's not impressed with any of those things. What does Guru Nanak said he call himself in Asakivad? Hontadika, right? That I am what? A tadi of what? Low caste. That's how Guru Nanak Sahib describes himself. That I am a low person and all I want to do is be a tadi of Vaiguru, right? So Guru Nanak Sahib is associating with the lowest of the low, whereas Sikhi today we've made it about showing off, right? So I mean a really obvious example of that is how we treat people when they come to Gurdwara, for example. So when a famous politician comes to a Gurdwara, how do we treat them? What is the respect that we give to them? Is it the same respect we give to average people? When a famous Kirtani or a Baba comes to our house, people break out the water in the bowl, and the towel, because they can't wash their hands in the sink for some reason. And we make special food and all this stuff, right? But do we treat a regular Sikh that comes to our house with the same level of respect? I know Sikhs that do that level of seva. And that's what Guru Nanak said, Guru Gobind Singh Ji is asking of us. Can you give as much seva as you would give for a great king? Would you give it to one of my beloved Sikhs? Right? When Akbar came to Guru Amar Das Ji's court, how was he treated? So Akbar's the emperor of India, how was he treated by Guru Amar Das Ji?
Just like everyone else.
Just like everyone else. This guy who ate like the fanciest food, sitting on a throne, literally. And I remember reading about a British king, King John, I think it was? Not King John. King James, the one after Queen Elizabeth. They would have like these 60-course meals and stuff, and he would sit on a throne in front of everybody. And he had two people on either side of him whose jobs it was just to wipe his mouth after each bite, okay? He wouldn't wipe his own mouth. Like, that's what kings are like, okay? So a king like that, Akbar has thousands of servants. He has anything he wants in the world. He comes there and he's got to sit there and eat simple langar. There's no plates, there's no spoons. Who had langar back in the day? There's no, nowadays all the Gurdwara have plates and stuff, but there's no even plates there used to be in Gurdwara langars. You take the prashada and you have the dal on the prashada, right? And with the other hand you eat it. It's super tough if you're not used to it, right? How do I balance this? And then, but it's the most delicious food you've ever had, right? For those of you who have ever experienced eating langar in Punjab, in a very simple gurdwara made with pyar from the Sangat, it's better than any food anywhere. So for Akbar, this was an eye-opening experience. He was used to going places and people worshiping him, literally bowing down to him. And we can see that again and again with the earlier gurus. How did Guru Angad Sahib Ji respond to Humayun? When Humayun crossed the river with his army, and Guru Angad Sahib Ji was teaching the kids how to read and write, what did Guru Angad Sahib Ji do? Anyone know the story? So Guru Angad Sahib Ji just sat there and kept teaching the kids. He was in the middle of a lesson. So he didn't care. And Humayun was walking by, and it's like the emperor of India, and usually if the emperor walks by, what are you supposed to do? Does anyone know? You're supposed to get down on the ground and matha take to them. That's what the protocol was. You have to literally get on the ground. And Humayun pulls out his sword and is about to kill Guru Angad, and Guru Angad still refuses to acknowledge him. And finally, he gets so angry, he says, why don't you acknowledge that I'm here? And Guru Angad says, you know, you're nothing to me. When I have a guru, a Vaheguru, that is greater than anything, then you're nothing to me. And you should think about what type of king you are, that you would kill an innocent person who's teaching kids how to read and write. And Bhai was ashamed from his actions. So that's a Sikh response to power and authority. We can only create unity of society if we operate from a place where we do not divide people into pure and impure. So this is another challenge for us today, because many of us being Amritdhari, we start to think of non-Amritdhari Sikhs as somehow less than us. This is a common issue that both sides of the equation feel. And it's also an issue because, for example, here, there are tens of thousands of Sikhs, or people who call themselves Sikhs in Surrey, who would probably get a lot of benefit from coming to a camp like this, but who don't think of it as a place where they want to come to, you know? And the blame is not all on those of us who are Amritdhari. There's also needs to be room on the other side to try to open up your horizons and come to places where you are. But also, do we create a safe space? Who do we hang out with? How do we interact with people who don't look like us? How do we talk about people who don't look like us? Because if all Sikhs acted like we do today, there would have been no Khalsa Panth. Because there was a time when there was only two people, Guru Nanak and Bhai Mardana. And if Guru Nanak and Bhai Mardana went around to everybody and said, you aren't a Sikh, I cannot hang out with you, this is just, you know, like, I don't know if you smoke, do you eat meat, I can't go to your house, no, I'm sorry. There'd be no Sikhs. Because nobody would have become a Sikh. Everyone would have said, well, get away from us. Like, why are you bothering to come around? So we can transform people's lives, right? But first we have to transform our own lives. We have the ability to change our society. And we change that by rejecting all of these things. By rejecting thoughtless devotion, where we just worship for the sake of it. We're Sikhs only because our parents were Sikhs. Or we believe in superstition, or we believe in caste, or we're hypocrites, which is a big issue for a lot of us. So we pretend to be one thing. You know, I love talking to fellow Sikhs and everyone pretending for a little while like they don't watch TV or movies. And then after a little while you get to know them and everyone's like, yeah, that's my favorite movie, that's my favorite show. Because everyone pretends they've got a show that we've all put on for each other, because we don't want to pretend that we're, you know, just normal people. You know, everyone thinks Jap Dam's this great guy, I'll tell you horrible stories. He's a good guy.
How is Japna?
The real problems in our society, though, are these last two. Indifference and non-participation. That's a real killer of creating a unified society. The issue is not so much the people that hate other people. Let's just go back for a second. The issue is not these guys. The issue is these people over here, who aren't taking part but aren't taking a stand either. That's where a lot of us are. So the issue is not, there's a few people who are horrible, and you got to deal with them how you deal with them. The issue is that most of us refuse to stand up and take a strong stance on something. So we do that because we're afraid, because we're worried about ourselves, we're worried about consequences to our family, we're worried about consequences to our jobs. That's the place that we're working from. Puneet Singh was telling me awesome stories about Meva Singh, who's an amazing Gursikh who got shaheed by the Canadian government 100 years ago. And that type of thinking, Meva Singh went into the courthouse and he killed Hopkinson, the guy who was the spy for the Canadian government and responsible for the killing of 2 Sikhs in the Gurdwara, including the Granthi by Bhag Singh. And Meva Singh went into the courthouse and shot Hopkinson in a courthouse in front of everybody, and then put down the guns and said, "Arrest me, I did it." Okay? He didn't run away, he didn't hide, he didn't lie. He just shot him and he did it. He came to Canada with huge dreams. He had a whole family dependent on him. Can you imagine how much it would have cost to even come to Canada 100 years ago on a ship? And he didn't think twice. When it came down and the Panth needed action to be taken and justice to be done, he was willing to put himself and his whole family on the line. So that type of fearless thinking, that's what we need to develop. Can we be fearless like that? You know, we have an example also with Jaswant Singh Kala's family. Baji's here right now, and you can ask him stories about his father, very inspiring stories. Of someone who was not, you know, he was actually involved when he was younger in social movements and activism, but he had a job in a bank. He was a regular guy, he had 2 young kids. And he knew that all of them could be exposed, his family, his parents, his relatives, to great torture and pain, but he knew that he had to take a stand. So we want to operate out of a place of genuine practices that have meaning. So instead of engaging in ritualism, Guru Nanak Sahib Ji said, don't waste your time going to tirthas and doing these rituals. Don't waste your time going to mandirs and feeding the idols and doing stuff like that. Go and feed people who are hungry. That's something you can do. That's something useful. Now, ironically, what have we made langar into today? Or is langar mainly for people who are hungry today? No, right? Langar is an awesome buffet now, right? It's like a delicious buffet, and if there's not something sweet in langar, how much do people complain? Right? If there's no mititro, or there's no kheer, or there's no semia, people are like, what is this? I'm supposed to eat langar, right? This is a type of thinking we have now, right? We've turned langar into something like, okay, let's go. Langar was really a social act of transforming. It was about sitting together with people that you would otherwise consider to be garbage and sharing with them. So how can we develop that langar mentality today? That's what we want to do. How can we interact with people who we would consider to be really gross or horrible or dirty or wrong or whatever, and see the humanity inside of them? Can we develop that? When you create a society based on sincerity, so you mean what you say, integrity, so you aren't dishonest, seva, and compassion for all, you can achieve great things. So Guru Arjan Sahib Ji was able to build Harmandir Sahib. And Harmandir Sahib seva was not just done by Sikhs, but there were Muslims and Hindus involved as well. Everyone came to be a part of it. People wanted to be. Sikhs came from all over different parts of India to be a part of the seva of building Harmandir Sahib, because they wanted to be part of this huge transformative project. So my question to you today is, Asa Ki Vaat is a call to arms every day. It's a call for us to pick up this metaphorical Kripan, Khanda, and destroy the bottom inside of us and destroy duality in the world around us. And we have to ask ourselves every day, how are we doing that? What are our huge projects that we as a Panth are doing? What big things are we doing to transform the world? Because the Gurus actually went out and did transformative projects. They didn't just talk about it. They built cities, they built armies, they built schools, they built hospitals. They went around and they transformed the face of Punjab. So every single day, we need to destroy duality in ourselves and in the world. I want to end off with this other quote of Professor Purna Singh, and then we'll open it up to a discussion. That here, Professor Purna Singh talks about Asa Ki Vaat. He says, this music is struck in all Sikh gurdwaras and in all Sikh hearts every morning. It is, as it were, the sacred gift of Guru Nanak Sahib to his disciples. All the Gurus listened to it. Guru Gobind Singh Ji was so enamored of it, he listened to it every morning. Once, when chased by the Mughal hordes, he had quit the fortress of Anandpur and the enemy was coming on him in hot pursuit. He made his Sikhs settle down to sing it. The enemy fell upon them during the singing of the song. All was lost, but the song still remains. Asa Ki Vaat is a victor of 1,000 battlefields of death. This song is a holy chant. Its tremendous vibration reduces time to one point, and it rings in the Sikh heart like 100 bells. Its sound scares the apparitions and ghosts of darkness from the pasture lands, and the Sikh spirit rises supreme and lofty, imbued with the glory of the dawn. It's a beautiful way of looking at it. That every day when you do Asa Ki Vaat, you are destroying darkness. That battle is happening every day. You start off your day by saying, I'm rejecting impurity. I'm rejecting hypocrisy. I'm rejecting the idea that Vaheguru is separate from creation. And I'm going to go into the world and I'm going to act and behave like everyone I meet is Vaheguru. That Vaheguru is all around me. And I'm going to think in that term, I'm going to act in that way, and I'm going to change the world with that thinking. This is why Asakibar was so important for Sikhs. That even in times of battle, they never forgot to do Asakibar. Because it was what inspired them to do battle. So don't think that being inspired to do battle is, cutting off goats' heads and drinking the blood or doing bhang, okay? That's not what inspires Sikh warrior ethics. A dig at our Nahang friends, right? What really inspires Sikh warrior ethics is Asakibar, is Sukhmani Sahib, is Bani. That's what inspires it. It's a connection to Bani. With that connection, you don't need Bani to be able to be a fierce warrior, right? You can go and be a fierce warrior and destroy countless armies because you have the kirpa and the love of Vaheguru inside of you. That's how 46 can fight an army of 1 million at Jamkor Sahib. That's how Guru Hargobind Sahib in 1006 can defeat an army of 10,000 at Amritsar. That's how, the 30th anniversary of 1984 here, that's how a group of less than 200 men and women can fight off the world's 4th largest army for 11 days. So they were inspired not by hate, not by revenge, but by this amazing love. And now to bring it back to our practical life, because we're not going out and we're not fighting Mughals, we're not fighting any government. We're going out and we're going to school, we're going to our work, we're going to our job. We have to challenge ourselves, how can we in our day-to-day actions destroy duality and connect to Vaheguru? So that's something that we need to develop in ourselves. And one really easy way to do that is to stop judging other people and start interacting with people based on love and respect. That's the first step. We started off this section with Guru Nanak Sahib Ji giving out the food to people, right? Did Guru Nanak Sahib Ji ask if they were good people before he gave it to them? No. If you read Old Retname, what's one of the worst things you can do when you're around Dig, making and giving a prasad? What's one of the worst things you can do that the old Maryade say is like really, really horrible, that you'll just, like, they essentially say you go to hell if you do it. And
Giving an unequal amount.
unequal amount. Very, very strict in the old Maryade. They don't give more langar to some people, less langar to other people. Don't give more prasad to some people, less to other people. Now, the point being is that in the old days, you can imagine, if he was a rich or powerful person, they would give him more stuff. If he's a poor person, they'd be like, okay, fine, here, if you have to. So, that's not an issue for us anymore. Everyone gets prasad equally, and people get more if they want to. They can go up and get like 5 times if they want, right? That's not an issue for us. The issue is, how are we on a day-to-day basis, what are we doing where we're being unequal, okay? So, that's the end of the presentation for now. We still have a bunch of time, right? Yeah. What time is it? 2:06. 24 minutes, okay. We can end a little bit early as well, because you guys have been sitting so nicely, and everyone stayed awake this time. Incredible. How old are you? 14. Oh, I thought you were like way younger. Sorry. 14. That's good. I thought he was like 10 or something. I was impressed. You didn't fall asleep. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Hanji Benji.
So earlier on in your presentation, you mentioned fearlessness. Guru Nanak Dev Ji says, "Vaid bin nirpo kyon thiye gurmukh shabad samay." And so, basically, Guru Sahib is saying, "Vaid bin without fear, nirpo kyon thiye." How can someone be fearless? So, what type of fear is Guru Nanak Dev Ji referring to?
Well, so that comes up in Asakibar as well, right? What's the smoke that talks about Fe? Right? It's like right in the first or second 40, right? Second 40. So Guruji does say that we need to have fear, right? Which is interesting. What is that type of fear? How do you guys understand that fear that Guru Nanak Sahib is talking about?
It's a loving devotion to Vaheguru that I think he refers to, right?
There is an element of fear in it, and it has two aspects to it, and I like the idea of the loving devotion. It's from what I've understood, and this is my perspective, please feel free to give your own perspective. One is, when you think about, for example, did anybody see recently the robot on Mars? What's it called? Spirit? No. What? Curiosity, right? Rover, the new one? It took a picture of Earth yesterday for the first time. Did anyone see that picture in the news? You guys read news. So Earth was like this tiny in the picture. So we know that in the galaxy, for example, there are billions of galaxies. Each galaxy has billions of stars. We're one tiny star in one tiny galaxy, right? And the universe is giantly immense. When you think of that, you just look up at the sky or you think about your place in the world and you say, wow, I am so little and insignificant. I feel like it's that type of fear. That this is so amazing, Vaheguru is so awe-inspiring, so huge and unbelievable and unfathomable, that I'm so tiny and insignificant that I'm just in awe of you. It's that va idea, you know? That you are so great. The other way that fear is important, because fear is also important, is fear of the consequences of your own actions, which does come in Bani a lot. So Bani says, and Asakivar says, if you do negative actions, you are just going to be, you know, disrespected and just horribly treated by the end of your life or in your next life, however you want to understand it, based on your negative actions. So we should be afraid of how we behave and act. Because if we act in a negative and horrible way, we are going to have to suffer the consequences of that in some way or another. So fear is important in that sense. It can't be the guiding principle, though, of your actions. Because when you're doing it out of fear, then you're still doing it out of an expectation of something, an expectation of a lack of punishment, for example. And the punishment is not like in the Christian idea where there's a devil punishing you. The punishment is your own punishment because it's a result of your own actions. And the reward is its own reward too. So in Sikhi, the reward is to be in love with Vaheguru. That is a reward enough. You know, what do Sikhs always say when Guruji would say to them, you know, ask for anything, right? And if someone came up to us and said, ask for anything, you know, like, I know I would say, you know, I'd really like to win the lottery so I don't have to work and I can pay off my house and car mortgage, you know, car payments and house payments, you know? Like that's our thinking of where we would want. Or we want to be famous or really rich or powerful. But when Guru Hargobind asked Baba Burdaji, he said, I just want to be your Sikh, you know? When Guru Gobind Singh asked for your Buddha Shah, what did he say? He said, I want your gis that have fallen off and your Ganga. Those are the things that Sikhs ask for, right? So it's when you're in a state of love, that's its own reward as well. You don't need any other questions, comments? You guys must have some ideas. I could just stand here and be awkward for a really long time. So tomorrow morning we're going to do Asakivar together. And while we're doing it, you want to both try to understand the meanings, but don't also feel it. That's important. So this is why doing Samthya and learning the meanings and reading Tikas and Steeks are important, because then you're able to get the meaning without having to think about it too much. So you don't want to be sitting there and not experiencing it either, because really connecting to Asakivar is worth, or listening to Asakivar or singing it is worth, like, you know, countless of these lectures, right? These lectures are just a way for us to get a basic understanding. But to really understand Asakivar, you need to do it. You need to sing it, and you need to be a part of it. So the Bani's up there on the screen. All of us can sing along, and we all need to take part. And we should try to develop this in our own lifestyle. So even if you, after you do your Nitnem, if you don't have time to go to Gurdwara, and a lot of us might not live close to Gurdwaras, if you can listen to Asakivar in the morning, or you can read Asakivar, but listen to it much nicer. You know, not all of us are able to do Kirtan. Or listen to even just a few Shakya in the morning, and then do it over the week, maybe divide it into 6 or 4, you know? And do 6 a day or 4 a day, to develop that and make it a part of your everyday life. Because this was something that Sikhs used to make a part of their everyday life, and it inspired them on a day-to-day basis. Okay, anybody else? So before I go, I need to do some advertising. So I work for the Sikh Research Institute. We're an organization based all over North America. We're not based out of anywhere. And we have different programs. And our programs are all about developing a Guru-inspired life. So what that means is that we want to try to get people to connect with Bani. That's our main focus. And we do that by doing a civic leadership retreat, which is a 2-week-long retreat, by, yeah, I'm going to get to that. By doing educational resources, so we published our first textbook. This just got published this week. It's going to be coming soon. It's an introduction to Guru Granth Sahib Ji's grammar and language, first time in English. So people who want to try to understand Guru Granth Sahib Ji's language and grammar, and it goes through different grammar ideas because there are many different schools of thought in the Panth as well. And we do monthly workshops as well that are live online. I'm doing one next Saturday at 12 o'clock, so 10 o'clock Pacific time on Baba Jarnail Singh, looking at his role 30 years after 84 and reevaluating his life. So seeing why he did what he did, what he did, was it positive or negative, and what his impact is today, and what we can learn from it, okay? And this year, we are doing our civic leadership retreat here at Khalsa Center, which is pretty exciting for me, because I get to come here and be here for 2 weeks. And we do 3 different courses. So there's Sikhi 101, where you learn about Guru Granth Sahib Ji, you learn about Bhai Gurdas Ji's Vara, you learn about Bhai Nand Lal Ji, and you learn about basic Sikh theology. Sikhi 201 is a more in-depth, for those who have a better understanding of Sikhi already. We go through more philosophical issues, we look at different scholars in Sikh history, we look at primary sources like the old texts and new texts, and we look at modern day Sikh issues as well as sovereignty in 1984 and afterwards. And then we have our Gurmukhi class, which is essentially using that textbook that we've developed and going through it, really understanding Guru Granth Sahib Ji. It's a wonderful course. It really leaves you with a pretty amazing understanding of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and just gives you an amazing appreciation for the genius of the Gurus as well. And this year we'll be having a 4th stream as well. There'll either be another Gurmukhi class, a more introductory one, or it'll be a Gurmat Sangeet one. So we haven't decided yet. And that's going to be here at Khalsa Center, July 29th to 9th of August. So go to our website, then you get to hear me talk for 2 weeks. So I don't know if that's a selling point or not, but I really look forward to being here and doing it. And I would ask you guys to come out and support. For those of you guys who aren't married yet, don't have kids, and don't have jobs, you're still in school, this is the time to spend 2 weeks. Because when you're older, it's a lot harder to get 2 weeks off, okay? So thank you so much for inviting me again, and for the chance to speak to you guys. I really appreciate it. Sorry for all the mistakes I've made and my mispronunciations. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.